Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey watching Colt and Larissa. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. I usually have things to say when I watch this show. Let's see if anything of interest comes out of my face.
Typically, if a domestic violence happens, a pattern of repeated behavior is very common.
Colt, he took my phone because Colt wants to control me.
Physically took your phone away or just...
He physically took my phone away. He put it in his pockets. And at this time, I was screaming to him, please give my phone back.
All right, we're getting a little bit more detail. It's a continuation of the detail that we've heard before, that during the incident where the police were called a second time, they were in a fight and he took her phone away and she was asking for the phone back. And then she kind of jumps ahead. My cat wants to chime in. And then suddenly the police are there. If I were the attorney and I wanted to know the full story, I'd say, okay, what led up to the phone being taken away? Who called the police? Why did the police take you away? These are details that, if you're looking to defend her, would be important. And I guess as a watcher of this TV show, I'm interested from a curiosity standpoint about those details.
And arrested Colt. I was crying, screaming.
Okay.
Then I just think that Colt say all kind of lies. I think Colt say she has a previous domestic violence. So the officer took it off, handcuffed Colt, and they arrested me.
You have the previous record, so that's a little bit more suspicious than...
Yeah, but that is not evidence of a crime, the fact that you had a previous record. And the previous record has its own dubiousness to it as well, or at least what's been shown to us on the TV show. The case was dismissed by the judge, by the way. So it is interesting. Now, as I said before, a sign of intimate partner violence or high control relationship is to take away one's access to communication, i.e. taking away their phone. That's a big red flag. If I heard about a conflict and I didn't know much information, but I heard that someone took someone else's phone away, then I would be very concerned. That is not common. How many of you have been in a fight with your spouse? How many times have you taken your spouse's phone away? That's a very particular behavior and usually an indication of a much larger iceberg below the water. Maybe we'll find out what that was. Let's continue watching.
Colt, who has no record.
I don't trust what Colt say to the police because they never take someone for no reason.
Well, they do sometimes, but not usually. So that would be something that would be very interesting for Larissa to learn. What was the premise upon which they took her? They arrested him first, or they detained, I don't know the exact terminology, but they handcuffed him. Colt said something to them, and then they went after her. So let's find out what that is. Now, I also identified, I think in the last episode, we had seen Colt very sternly say to Larissa in the midst of a fight, they were not getting along in the moment. He said something along the lines of, I really hope that I don't have to call the police again, during a moment when it wasn't seemingly called for. Now, you could argue, or maybe he would say, and we would believe him, that he was saying, look, I was just saying I didn't want to call the police, and I guess partly I was saying, please in the future when we have fights, will you please try to keep the emotions down? Will you please try to keep the conflict down? That's what I was trying to say. But it's pretty easy also to interpret that, and she did it at the time. She said, are you threatening me? That it was a threat. And again, how many times have you been in a fight with your partner or any partner you've been with and said something like that in a very stern, calm, arrogant voice? I really hope I don't have to call the police again. I really hope I don't have to call the police again. That is yikes, like I said.
Your phone was taken, so as a result, your ability to communicate was basically cut off. The police arrived, and initially they identified you as the victim, and then through Colt's either, discussions with the police officer.
Yeah, I think just because the previous domestic violence.
Yeah. So the police decided to believe Colt over you, obviously.
Now, I'm a little confused because the lawyer should have the police report, or it should seek the police report, because it should be all described there. Police don't, at least in the report, say, well, we detained her because she had a previous charge of domestic violence that was dismissed. That's why we arrested her and put her into holding cell for a couple days. They wouldn't be justified. Now, maybe they would, but my understanding of the law, that's not justifiable reason. So there must be something in the police report like the husband said that she did X, Y, and Z, or we observed that she did X, Y, and Z, or we questioned her and determined that she was a danger to them, so we decided to take her. Whatever. There should be something in the police report. By the way, as I always say on these shows, everything that I'm saying and reacting to is based on what this show is showing us. And the show is not a representation of reality. It is a edited, produced TV show. And everything that we're saying, so for example, when we talk about domestic violence or criminal behavior, without me doing an investigation or without these people hiring me so I'm allowed inside to actually get information, I have no idea what really happened. There's no way to tell. So I use these shows as a bouncing off point to talk about general issues such as domestic violence, intimate partner violence, high control, violence in general, criminality in general, personality in general. I can never know if that applies to these people because I can never know, one, what the show is deciding to show us, and two, what the cast members are deciding to show the cameras, because we should all understand that the cast members know there are 3 cameras pointed at them at all times, and we can't necessarily trust that that is a representation of reality. We just don't know. It could go a lot of different ways. Now, there are some things we can point to, but we'll just never really know the full story. Take it from me as someone who actually works with people on a ground level. The story is always much more complicated than what could be represented in a TV show like this. So I just want to remind everyone of that because I just feel like that should be said for moral reasons, but also for ethical reasons and legal reasons, frankly, is that if I'm going to watch this show and I'm going to comment on it, I need to make sure that everyone understands that I am not providing some sort of clinical statement about what's going on with these people. I have not made any conclusions because that would be unethical to my license. How do I know? I would have to actually, work with them, and then I wouldn't be able to talk about it on the internet. So I just want that to be clear. All right, let's get back to the show.
How's your day, dude?
It was a day.
Yeah?
How was your date? Did you hear anything about Larissa's
No.
arrangement?
I tried to go and talk to her, but she wouldn't let me in. And I knocked, and she wouldn't answer.
Well, that seems kind of...
So the mom, Debbie, really wants to know what's going on with Larissa. I am curious as to why Debbie really feels like she needs to know. And the only thing I can think of is that she, for a long time, has a heuristic, a shortcut to evaluating whether or not she is included or loved or getting her attachment needs met, and that's being included and being told information. Maybe even the secret about the kids was somewhat traumatizing to her. Maybe she had been traumatized early in life around secrets, and maybe for her to be withheld information was, when she was younger, very much associated with being withheld love and safety. Who knows? But it's a little unusual because, it's going to pan out one way or the other. And, she doesn't really like Larissa that much. And she's even said that she wouldn't mind if she was deported. So, what's going to happen is going to happen. And Larissa doesn't know what's going to happen. And the mom probably knows that. So it on the surface, it seems a little strange that she would really want to know the information, right? Now, it's also possible that she's just trying to pick a fight or something. She's just looking for a reason for there to be some conflict, and she's using that or something. I don't know. I'd want to ask Debbie, and there's probably 1,000 other possible reasons, but I would want to ask Debbie, okay, so you're trying to get information from Larissa. She doesn't want to give it to you. What would it mean to you to get that information? What would that mean? How would you feel? How do you feel not having the information? How would you feel if you had that information? And really try to figure that one out. Maybe there was some insight there, and maybe even some insight into what sort of traumas she needs to heal from that is being triggered by this withholding of information. I don't know, but let's continue watching. I mean, I guess there's another possibility that she just cares about Larissa and is just really anxious about her status. That's another possibility. I don't know how many viewers of the TV show believe that, but I'll add that to the list. Hey, deserving listeners, as you know, I'm constantly recommending that people go to therapy. We all need therapy from time to time. One of the options available that is definitely worth checking out is BetterHelp.com. So if you're looking for a therapist, I would give it a try by going to BetterHelp.com/Kirk. Make sure you use the /Kirk because you get 10% off your first month and it helps us out. I get a lot of emails from you saying that you're looking for a therapist. As you watch these videos, I know many of you have been motivated to find your own therapist, but I know it can be really hard to find a good one to work with. Like I said, one of the options available to try is BetterHelp.com/Kirk. And you should know that this service is available to clients worldwide, which is amazing. I've been told that you can start communicating with your therapist in under 24 hours. You can message with your counselor anytime. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. And I've been told that it's often less expensive than in-person therapy. So go to BetterHelp.com/Kirk to get 10% off your first month of therapy today.
Sounds like my wife.
She should have known at least 4 hours ago.
I'm sure Larissa knows everything.
She should have had the decency to tell you, this is not right.
All right, so it doesn't look like it's the last example. It's this decency issue. It's not right. What is that saying? I imagine what it is pointing to is that the mom doesn't like Larissa and is looking for any reason to blast her for that. You know, when, say, for example, you just hate your neighbor. Your neighbor always puts garbage on your side of the fence. They have loud parties. And then, I don't know, you see them walking down the road and you see them building something on their property. And you're just like, what are they building? What kind of stupid idiot thing are they building right now? Whereas if you like them, you'd be like, oh, what are they building right now? I wonder what's going on over there. So yeah, when you see things negatively, when you have a negative valence about someone, negative associations, you're going to look negatively towards everything that's happening. Because it makes sense that Larissa would be a little uptight about telling Debbie things. She's just like, this is embarrassing. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it with you. I feel like you're just going to criticize me, so just stay out of my business. Who knows? But let's continue watching.
I've been worried all day about Larissa's trial, and I haven't heard anything. It breaks my heart that Larissa hasn't told me about her outcome. Our relationship changed. We've barely spoken at all since the second arrest. She ignores me. I feel like Larissa just doesn't care at all for me or how I feel. She doesn't want to tell me anything anymore.
So it's always this question that I have as to what is their relationship like outside of the TV show. I hope most of us will understand that the TV show is only representing probably like 0.01% of the total relationship. And so I'm always wondering, like, what's happening when they're just hanging out at home? And from Colt's account, since the last arrest, there hasn't been much communication at all, and there's been a lot of distance. So that's interesting. And it just makes me wonder about, from the beginning, I've been wondering, do they actually like each other? Is there any affection between the two of these people? Maybe there was, but there wasn't a lot of evidence, and they didn't refer to it really. So it is concerning, and it's sad. It's sad to see two people, like if I had a friend like this, if say both of these people were my friends, I'd say something like, have you thought about just divorcing and maybe finding someone more compatible with you? Maybe someone that you actually like. Maybe that's the key to a good marriage, like you actually like someone. I don't know. Anyway, let's get back to watching.
I just don't think I understand how to make her happy.
She's a miserable person. You're not going to be able to make her happy. There's no way. You've tried everything that is possibly to do for her.
All right, so Debbie is throwing out a conceptualization as to why Colt and Larissa are not getting along. She's saying that it's because Larissa is a miserable person and there's no way you're going to please her. That's one conceptualization. My typical conceptualization of things like this, as many of you know because I talk about it all the time, is that there was initially some affection. Both people come to the table with certain relational traumas. that they accidentally trigger in each other. They will step on a landmine here. They will hurt the other person. They will be standoffish. They will attack a little too aggressively with their own needs, and that'll trigger the other person. They'll get hurt. They'll feel afraid, and then they feel vulnerable. They want to protect that, and then they transform that into anger, and then they transform that into hostility or withdrawal or superiority or put downs or calling the police or threats or taking phones away. That hurts the other person. That makes them afraid. That causes them to be vulnerable, put up defenses, anger, hostility, attack. You do that enough times, and you don't have any offsetting bonding or warmth or affection or resolution to any kind of conflict, i.e. going to therapy, and before long, you hate each other. And you don't even want to work on the relationship. You don't even want to bond. And I've had couples like that come into my office. It's one of the first questions I ask couples is, what percentage are you in this relationship? Because a lot of times couples will sit down on my couch and they'll go through the motions like they really want to work on the relationship. Then something happens down the line and I'm like, wait, does this person really in this relationship? Does this person actually want to be in this relationship? So I learned early in my career that, and unless I'm pretty sure based on what they're saying, I have to ask, okay, percentage-wise, with 0% meaning I'm out of this marriage, I'm done, totally for sure, and 100% meaning I'm 100% in this relationship, what percentage would you give yourself in terms of your commitment and your expectation of this working out? And sometimes there's some qualifiers. They'll say like, well, if things get better, then I'm 100%. But if you had to ask me right now, I'm a 75. Or they'll say, well, I'm having a particularly bad day, so I'd put me at like a 20%, but I don't know, if you give me a couple days, I'll probably get back up to 80%. Or they'll say, well, I'm a 90%, but I don't know, I feel like it's slipping every day. So it gives me a chance to hear where they gauge themselves, and there's a conversation there. And of course, it's not some sort of standardized percentage, but it does give me an idea of how dedicated the person is, because in the beginning, people tend to be fairly dedicated, not always. And as you conflict, that dedication tends to wane, and then it just gets stomped out and dies. And because I need to know, because if someone is at a 10% and we're working hard on conflict resolution and helping with their sex life, helping them have bonding, helping them to communicate, and someone is basically completely out the door mentally, then what's the point? What are we doing? The other thing is if someone's 10% and they're having a real hard time motivating themselves, say like for 5 weeks we've been talking about how to improve the communication. They come in for session number 6 and I said, well, how'd things go? And they're like, well, we got in a bunch of big fights. And then I'll say, well, did you work on some of the self-awareness things and some of the behaviors that we talked about? And there's like, no, I didn't really do anything about that. So if they're at 10%, then I'll say, I'll wonder if the reason why they didn't do anything is because they're at 10%. They're just not really into it. They don't, marriage is work. Long-term relationships are work. Any relationship is work. Your family relationships are work. Your best friend relationships are work. Everything is work. Your work relationships are work. Everything is work. My relationships with you, the viewer, is a lot of work sometimes. I'm telling you, most of the time it's great. Like any relationship, like any friendship, my relationship with the viewers is mostly wonderful, but there are some times when it's tough, and I have to work at it. If I just gave up every time there was something negative, then I would have never done this sort of thing. I've been doing this for 12 and a half years. And as a collective, I have a relationship with the people who, tune in. Anyway, my point is that this fantasy that relationships aren't work is something that children believe, and it's something that's in rom-coms and Disney movies. It's not something that's in reality. I remember early in life someone saying this to me. I think it was in high school or early college, and someone said, well, long-term relationships or marriage, it takes a lot of work. And I remember thinking at the time, well, that's a bummer. I hope that's not true. I want love to be love and fairy tales and, rainbows and wonderful and giggling all the time. And I remember being bummed out that this person was like, marriage is a lot of work. And I thought, you must not know what marriage really is. You must have bad relationships. Then I actually had long-term relationships, and I learned, oh yeah. And then I studied relationships and actually help people professionally with their relationships. And relationships are always work. They are always work. There is always work. There are tough moments where you have to push past. And if you're only 10% in the relationship, then you don't want to do that work. You don't have that motivation, right? So that's an important thing that I need to know. And it's an important thing that partners need to know. Because if someone is a 10%, this is just me talking about couples therapy, then we have to work on increasing that 10%. And what I don't say you have to, but what I say to the 10% person is I say, okay, we are not going to be able to improve this relationship if you're a 10% because you're not going to be motivated to work on the relationship. Is that true? And they'll be like, yeah, that's pretty much true. I say, okay, so then we have to figure out if you want to, we have to set a primary goal, sort of a fundamental goal of whether or not how we're going to raise that percentile from 10 to 40 to 70, because then we can actually start working on the relationship because then you'll have the motivation. Do you want to do that? And then they'll say, I don't know if I want to do that. Okay, then we have to go. Then we have to go deeper, even more fundamental. Do you want to even work on improving, on increasing your motivation to be in this relationship? So it's a very fundamental question that early in my career, and a lot of novice therapists, they'll just completely skip that. They'll just go straight to what they've been sort of taught in classes, which is to do all these homework assignments and all these intervention-y things without addressing the fundamental question, does this person want to be in the relationship? And if they don't really, do they want you, the therapist, to help them with that? And if they do, then how are you going to do that? You're not going to be able to do homework and work on communication if they don't even want to be in the relationship. Just because a couple comes into my office does not mean that they actually want to be together. That's not a guarantee. But it's a totally worthy thing to work on in therapy, to explore the question, do I want to start working on improving my dedication to this marriage? What does that look like? Well, it's a lot of self-exploration. Maybe it is improving the relationship such that the person is inspired. It's like, actually, things have been going pretty well. And I think I'm up to like a 40%. Things are getting better. And these are very difficult conversations, but it's better to make them explicit than to have them be hidden and unknown. So I wonder for Colt and Larissa, if I ask them what percentage are you in this relationship, I wonder what they would say. There's evidence that points to Larissa being a very low percentage. Colt seems a little higher because he seems to still be trying to reach out. At least he exhibits that on the show. Now, behind the scenes, that's a different question. There's some evidence that maybe some things are happening behind the scenes where he's quite mean. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's not dedicated to the relationship. It might actually mean he's quite dedicated to the relationship, but just in a very dysfunctional way, trying to manage the relationship through control. I don't know. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.